My daughter-in-law fed my grandson lies about me. Grandpa never cared, she told him. He forgot you again. I did not know she had been saying those words until I saw the way my grandson looked at me backstage. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. He held a prop hammer in one hand and would not meet my eyes. Then he opened an old prop box, pushed aside a red cloth, and found a folded receipt. My name was on it. My payment. And one note I had asked the store owner to print at the bottom. For Evan, Grandpa is proud of your voice. Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. And if you are watching late tonight, please take care of your health, drink some water, and stay with me. My daughter-in-law thought she had buried the truth under costumes, old scripts, and stage dust. She never imagined my grandson would find the one receipt that still had my name on it. My name is Joshua Baker. I was 63 years old when I realized a child can be taught to doubt love before he is old enough to understand why someone would lie about it. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, not in a fancy neighborhood, just a quiet street with older trees, cracked sidewalks, and porches where people still wave if they are not too busy pretending they did not see you. For most of my working life, I was a school maintenance supervisor. That means I fixed things children were never supposed to notice. Leaking sinks, loose handrails, buzzing lights, a gym door that would not close right before a basketball game, a heater that always quit on the coldest morning, and auditorium steps that had to be safe because one scared child in costume might be walking across them under stage lights, trying not to forget his lines. I spent my life fixing things children never noticed, because the point was for them to feel safe enough not to notice. After hours, I built sets for community theater. Fake kitchens, fake trees, fake windows, fake doors that never led anywhere, but somehow helped children believe they could step into another world. I used to joke that I built more fake living rooms than some contractors built real ones. My wife, Ruth, laughed every time, even when the joke got old. Ruth Baker was an elementary reading aide and a volunteer children's theater coach. She had a gift for finding the quiet child in the back row and convincing him his voice was worth hearing. She used to say, "A child who feels seen on stage may learn not to disappear in real life." That was Ruth. She believed small encouragement could become shelter. When our grandson Evan was little, he followed me around the auditorium like a duckling in sneakers. He carried a little wooden stage hammer I made from scrap pine. It was not a real hammer, not for real nails, just a prop tool for a boy who wanted to help. He called me Grandpa Hammer. I pretended to hate it. I loved it more than I ever admitted. Evan would stand beside me while I painted flats or tightened screws under the stage. He asked serious questions about fake walls, trapdoors, stage lights, and why actors whispered loudly enough for the back row to hear. One afternoon, he looked at a painted cardboard window and said, "Grandpa, it's not real." I told him, "No, but it has to be honest about where it belongs." He nodded like I had said something wise. Maybe I had. Ruth used to say every school theater needed a shelf for the kid whose parents could not afford to say yes. A place with old scripts, used stage shoes, brushes, tape, costume pieces, and a few small tools. Nothing expensive. Just enough so a child would not quit because money stood in the doorway. After Ruth passed, that idea stayed with me. So did Evan. He became the reason I kept showing up at Willow Creek Middle School even after retirement. If the drama teacher needed a door fixed, I went. If the prop box needed sorting, I went. If a kid needed scrap wood for a pretend fence, I found some. And if Evan needed something, I tried to make sure he had it. Quietly. That was how men like me loved. We did not post much. We did not make speeches. We showed up with screws, duct tape, and a receipt folded in a pocket. But life got expensive in 2026. Even simple things started costing more than they should. Shoes, school supplies, camp fees, used laptops, gas for pickup and drop-off. The little extra costs that do not look big on paper until a family is already tired. I knew my son Grant worked hard as an HVAC service manager. I knew long days left him worn down. I knew my daughter-in-law Brielle was busy with PTA fundraisers and her online resale shop. So I helped. I did not think that made me special. I thought that made me a grandfather. Then, little by little, Evan stopped calling. At first, I blamed age. 13 is a strange doorway. Boys start changing their voices, hiding their feelings, and pretending they do not miss people they still need. I told myself he was growing up. I told myself theater friends, school pressure, and family schedules had simply crowded me out. When my calls went unanswered, I waited. When birthday thank yous never came, I smiled and said, "Kids forget." When school events passed without anyone telling me, I assumed tickets were limited. I did not want to be the old man demanding attention. That was the mistake Brielle counted on. I thought my grandson was simply growing up and needing me less. I did not know someone had been teaching him that needing me would only lead to disappointment. The first lie Brielle told was small. That is why I missed it. Big lies make noise. They knock things over. They leave people staring at each other across a room, wondering who is brave enough to say what everyone already knows. Small lies are different. They sit down quietly beside the truth and pretend to be helping. It started with a phone call. I had found a used script binder at Oak Hollow Books and Stage Supply, the kind with clear sleeves inside and a zipper that still worked if you treated it kindly. Evan had been carrying loose pages in his backpack, folded and bent, and I knew that bothered him more than he admitted. So I called Brielle. "Would Evan like this?" I asked. "I can drop it by after school." There was a pause, not long, just enough for me to hear the door close in her voice. "He's overwhelmed right now," she said. "Maybe give him space." Space. That word sounds healthy until the wrong person uses it like a fence. I said, "Sure, I don't want to crowd him." "That's probably best," she answered. "He needs consistency." Consistency. Another good word. Another small fence. A week later, I saw Evan with that binder in the hallway outside the auditorium. Same zipper, same little scratch on the corner. I smiled before I could stop myself. "Looks like you got yourself organized," I said. He held it against his chest. "Mom found it. She said you didn't want to deal with theater stuff." For a second, I thought I had misheard him. The hallway was noisy, lockers closing, kids laughing, a teacher calling someone's name. But Evan's face was clear. He believed it. I could have corrected him right there. I could have said, "No, son, I bought that for you." But there are moments when the truth feels too heavy to put into a child's hands without warning. So I only said, "Well, it suits you." He shrugged and walked away. That shrug stayed with me longer than it should have. After that, the little things kept happening. I mailed a birthday card with a $25 gift card inside. Evan never mentioned it. I asked Grant if it arrived. He said, "I'll check with Brielle." He never did, or maybe he did and did not want the answer. Grant is my son, and I love him. But love does not make a man brave. He worked long hours as an HVAC service manager, came home tired, and treated conflict like a hot pipe he did not want to touch without gloves. Brielle knew that. She knew he would choose peace in the house over truth in the family. She was good at looking reasonable. That was the dangerous part. Brielle Baker could stand in a school lobby with a clipboard in one hand and a tired smile on her face, and people would believe she had carried the whole world alone. PTA fundraisers, costume drives, online resale boxes stacked in her SUV, posts about supporting kids, posts about boundaries, posts about protecting emotional health. All good words, all useful words. But good words can still hide ugly work. The first time I heard her say something sharp in public, it was at a costume sorting afternoon. I had come by to fix a loose hinge on the prop cabinet. I was under the stage with a screwdriver when I heard Brielle talking to Kelsey Rowe, one of those PTA mothers who repeated concern with the excitement of gossip. Kelsey said, "Evan's lucky you handle all this." Brielle sighed. "I just don't want him disappointed again. Some people love promising things more than showing up." Kelsey clicked her tongue. "Family can be like that." I stayed under that stage until my knees hurt. Not because I was afraid of Brielle, because Evan was 10 feet away, sorting costume hats, and I refused to turn his rehearsal into a courtroom. That was how Brielle won the early rounds. She understood I would not fight dirty in front of a child. She also understood that silence looks a lot like guilt when someone else is narrating it. A month later, Evan needed used stage shoes for theater camp. Money was tight for everyone. Gas was high. Groceries were high. Even school activities seemed to come with a bill hidden behind every permission slip. I bought the shoes from Oak Hollow and paid for the deposit while I was there. Marcy Lane, the owner, asked if I wanted a note printed on the receipt. I said, "Write this, for Evan. Grandpa is proud of your voice." She smiled like that meant something. It did. When I saw those shoes on Evan later, I asked gently, "They fit all right?" He looked confused. "Yeah, Mom found them. She said they were the last pair." There it was again. My love, wearing somebody else's name. I went home that night and sat in the garage with the little wooden stage hammer on my bench. The smart thing would have been to call Grant. The honest thing would have been to ask Brielle directly. But I kept seeing Evan's face in the hallway. Not angry, not cruel, just young enough to believe the adult who spoke first. So I did what older men often do when they are afraid truth will hurt a child. I waited. And waiting gave the lie room to grow. The first lie was small enough to ignore. The second was small enough to forgive. By the time I understood there was a pattern, my grandson had already started looking at me like a stranger. The first time I understood the gifts were changing names. I was standing in the back of Willow Creek's auditorium with a paintbrush in my hand. It was late afternoon. The stage lights were off, but enough sun came through the side doors to show dust floating over the seats. I had come in to touch up a painted fence for the spring showcase. Nothing big, just a few scratches, a loose corner, and one wobbly brace that would have bothered me all night if I left it alone. That was how I worked. Quiet fixes, small repairs, no applause needed. Evan came in with 2 boys from drama club, laughing about a scene where a fake door was supposed to slam but kept swinging open like it had stage fright. Then I saw the script binder in his hand. Blue zipper, clear sleeves, a little scratch on the corner. The same one I bought at Oak Hollow Books and Stage Supply. I almost smiled. Almost. Then I heard him say, "Mom found this for me. She said I needed to stop losing pages." The paintbrush stopped in my hand. It was such a small sentence. That was the trouble with it. If Brielle had stolen a car, people would understand the damage. If she had emptied a bank account, there would be a record. But when someone steals your name from a small act of love, the wound looks too tiny to explain. So I said nothing. I painted the fence, a fake fence. Funny thing about theater props, even fake things can be honest if they stand where they're supposed to. Some adults could learn from that. The second time was the shoes. Evan had been nervous about theater camp because the kids were supposed to wear black stage shoes, not sneakers, not church shoes. Stage shoes. Brielle had mentioned the cost out loud at a family dinner, with that tired little sigh she used when she wanted people to know she was carrying too much. "I'll figure it out," she said. "I always do." I did not want to embarrass her. So the next morning, I drove to Oak Hollow and asked Marcy Lane if she had a used pair in Evan's size. She did. $26. I paid for them with cash and bought a few extra rolls of gaffer tape while I was there. 2 weeks later, Evan wore those shoes on stage. I waited until rehearsal ended and asked, "They fit all right?" He looked down at them. Yeah, Mom got lucky. Last pair. Mom got lucky. I nodded like an old fool. Because what do you say to a 13-year-old? No, son, your mother lied. No, son, she put her name over mine like tape over a label. I could not do it. Not there. Not with kids packing up costumes and Lorna Hayes calling out reminders from the stage. So I only said, good, they look right on you. He shrugged. Thanks, Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker. Not Grandpa. Not Grandpa Hammer. I went home that evening and sat in my garage longer than I should have. The little wooden stage hammer lay on my workbench, scratched from years of pretend repairs. Ruth used to say love becomes real to children when adults show up without making the child manage their feelings. I had believed that. Brielle had turned it against me. After that, I started looking closer. The refurbished laptop I helped pay for showed up in Evan's backpack, and Grant told me, Brielle really stretched to make that happen. The dental copay I covered after Evan cracked a tooth on a popcorn kernel became, according to Brielle, another thing I had to handle by myself. The set paint I dropped off at the auditorium appeared in a PTA post with Kelsey Rowe commenting, Brielle, you always come through for these kids. And under that, Brielle replied, just doing what moms do. I stared at that post for a long time, not because I needed a thank you, because she was not just taking credit. She was building a story, a mother alone, a grandfather absent, a child slowly trained to believe disappointment had my face. I began keeping the receipts. Oak Hollow, dental office, laptop repair shop, theater camp confirmation, paint supplies, birthday card tracking. I tucked them into a gray folder in my desk, not because I wanted to use them, but because I was starting to fear the day someone would ask me to prove I had loved my own grandson. That thought made me feel ashamed. An old man should not need proof of love, but here I was, saving receipts like evidence. The worst one was the theater camp receipt. Marcy had printed the note exactly as I asked. For Evan, Grandpa is proud of your voice. I remember reading it in the parking lot and feeling foolishly happy. Proud, even. Not of the money, of him. That boy had a voice that shook at first, then found itself halfway through a line. Ruth would have loved that. But when the receipt never came up, when Evan never said anything, when Brielle acted like camp had nearly broken her budget, I understood the note had not reached him. The money had. The love had not. That was when the gifts stopped feeling missing. They had arrived. My name had not. By the time I saw my grandson thanking someone else for the things I had sent with love, I understood the gifts were not missing. My name was, and Brielle had started teaching the whole school to call that absence proof. The fundraiser was held in the school cafeteria, not the auditorium. The auditorium was too crowded with half-painted flats, costume racks, and folding chairs that always wobbled, no matter how many times I tightened the bolts. So they used the cafeteria, long tables, paper signs, a donation jar by the cupcakes, a little booth where parents sold used books, costume pieces, and things children had outgrown before anyone was ready to admit it. I came through the side door carrying a box of screws, paintbrushes, gaffer tape, and scrap wood I had sanded smooth in my garage. Nothing fancy. Just things the theater kids could use. Ruth used to say every school theater needed a shelf for the kid whose parents could not afford to say yes. I had been thinking about starting one in her name. A quiet little supply shelf. Scripts, shoes, brushes, tape, maybe a few small tools. The kind of things that make a child feel included without making them explain why money is tight at home. That was why I came. Not to argue, not to prove anything. Just to help. Then I saw Brielle near the donation table. She had a clipboard against her chest and that tired, brave smile people praised her for. The one that said she was carrying more than anyone knew. The one that made other parents lean in and say things like, I don't know how you do it. Kelsey Rowe stood beside her. Kelsey was one of those women who could turn concern into a knife and still call it kindness. I was setting my box down near the hallway when I heard her. Brielle had to pay for Evan's camp herself, Kelsey said to two other parents. Some grandparents like making promises more than keeping them. My hand froze on the box. Brielle did not correct her. That was the part I watched. She did not say, "No, Joshua helped." She did not say, "That isn't fair." She only looked down, gave a tired little sigh, and touched the edge of her clipboard like she was too dignified to complain. It was a performance, a soft one, a clean one, the kind no one thinks to question. One of the parents glanced toward me, not openly rude, worse, careful, like I had become a man they had already heard about. I wanted to walk over. I wanted to put every receipt on that cafeteria table and say, "Here, read before you repeat." But Evan was 20 feet away, standing near the bake sale table with a paper cup of lemonade. He looked small in that room, even at 13. Too old to be treated like a little boy, too young to understand how adults can poison a story until a child drinks it like truth. So, I stayed where I was. I swallowed the anger. That is what grandparents do too often. We swallow pain so children do not have to taste it. Lorna Hayes saw me from across the room. She was Evan's drama teacher, mid-40s, sharp eyes, gentle voice, always carrying 3 pens and never finding the one she wanted. She walked over and looked into my box. "Mr. Baker," she said softly, "you brought enough supplies for half my wish list." "Only the cheap half." She smiled. Then her eyes moved toward Brielle and Kelsey. The smile faded a little. "I know what you've done for this program," she said. That nearly broke me. Not because it was enough, because someone had noticed. I nodded and tried to keep my voice steady. Kids need the stage more than adults need credit. Lorna looked at me like she wanted to say more, but she did not. Good teachers know when a child's life is tangled in adult silence. They step carefully because one wrong sentence can turn a school hallway into a battlefield. Across the room, Brielle laughed at something another parent said. Light, easy, polished. A woman doing everything alone. That was the role she had chosen, and I had become the missing man in her script. Before I tell you what Evan found in that prop box, let me ask you something. If someone fed your grandchild lies about you, would you stay quiet to protect the child? Or would you show the proof and risk breaking their heart? Tell me in the comments, because many grandparents know the pain of being erased by someone else's story. A few minutes later, Evan walked past me. I smiled. "Hey, kiddo." He stopped, but only because manners had not completely left him. "Hi." One word, flat. I looked at the lemonade cup in his hand. "You nervous about showcase?" He shrugged. "Not really." "That's good." Another silence. Then he looked at the supply box. "Did Ms. Hayes ask you to bring that?" "No, I thought it might help." His eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, in confusion. Like help from me no longer fit the story he had been given. "Mom said you mostly come when people can see you doing stuff." The words came out quiet, almost embarrassed. I felt them anyway. Everyone. I looked toward Brielle. She was watching us. Not closely enough for others to notice. Closely enough for me to understand she was measuring what I might say. So, I said the safest thing I could. Sometimes people misunderstand why someone shows up. Evan stared at me for a second, then looked away. "Yeah, maybe." He walked back toward the other kids. I stood there with my hands empty, feeling like someone had taken the box from my arms and put something heavier inside my chest. Kelsey passed behind me then. She did not know I could hear her, or maybe she did. "Poor Brielle," she murmured to another parent, trying to keep that boy from getting hurt again. Hurt again. That phrase stayed with me. Again meant history. Again meant pattern. Again meant Brielle had not just told one story. She had built a whole record in other people's minds. I looked around the cafeteria, donation jar, cupcakes, kids laughing, parents buying used costumes, a school trying to keep art alive with $5 bills and volunteer hours. And in the middle of it, my daughter-in-law had managed to turn my love into evidence against me. I stayed until the fundraiser ended. I helped Lorna carry the supply box to the auditorium. I checked the loose hinge on the prop cabinet. I tightened 2 screws on a platform step. I stacked the paintbrushes near the sink. Quiet work. That was all I knew how to do. Before I left, Lorna stopped me near the stage door. "Mr. Baker," she said, "if you ever need someone to confirm what you've given this program, I can." I looked at her. For a long moment, I could not answer. Then I said, "I hope it never comes to that." She gave me a sad smile. "So do I." But her face told me she thought it might. On the drive home, I kept hearing Kelsey's voice. Some grandparents like making promises more than keeping them. When I got home, I opened the gray folder in my desk. I added the Oak Hollow receipt, the laptop payment, the dental copay record, the theater camp confirmation, the returned card tracking number. Then I wrote today's date on a clean sheet of paper and added one sentence. Brielle's story has left the house. That was the moment everything changed. Inside a family, lies can hide behind closed doors. But once those lies walk into a school cafeteria, smile at other parents, and teach a whole room to misunderstand you, they stop being private pain. They become a public record. That night, I realized Brielle had not only turned my grandson against me, she had started teaching the whole school how to misunderstand me, too. I called my son Grant the next morning, not because I wanted a fight. At 63, a man learns that some fights cost more than they fix. I had no interest in throwing accusations around like loose nails on a stage floor. I only wanted my son to look at what was happening before Evan got hurt any worse. Grant answered on the 4th ring. There was wind in the background and the distant hum of a service truck. "Hey, Dad," he said. "I'm between calls. Everything okay?" That question hurt more than it should have. Everything okay. A simple phrase people use when they are hoping the answer is yes, because they do not have time for no. "I need to talk to you about Evan." He sighed before I finished the sentence. Small sigh. Tired sigh. The kind a man makes when he already knows there is trouble and has decided it is easier not to name it. "What happened now?" "Grant," I said, "your son thinks I forgot things I paid for." Silence. Then the sound of a truck door closing. "What do you mean?" "I bought his script binder. I paid for the stage shoes. I helped with the theater camp deposit. I sent a birthday card. He does not know any of that." Grant did not answer right away. I could picture him standing beside his work van, one hand on his hip, looking down at the pavement like the truth was a leak he did not want to crawl under. "Dad, Brielle handles most of the school stuff." "I know she does." "So maybe there's been some miscommunication." Miscommunication. Another clean word people use when a dirty one would make them responsible. I closed my eyes. "Grant, miscommunication is when two people misunderstand each other. This is one person controlling what a child hears." He took a breath. "Dad, don't start." "Don't start what?" "Don't make this into something bigger. Brielle is under a lot of pressure." "So, am I supposed to let her turn me into a disappointment because she's tired?" "That's not what I said. It's what you're asking." Another silence. Longer this time. Then he said the sentence I had been afraid of. "Maybe it's better if you give them space for a while." I looked at the gray folder on my desk. Receipts, cards, payment confirmations, little pieces of proof stacked neatly like I was preparing for a trial I never wanted. "Space," I said slowly, "is what people ask for when they already moved the truth out of the room." Grant's voice hardened. "Dad, please, don't make Evan choose sides." That almost made me stand up. I gripped the edge of the desk instead. Because he was my son. because I still remembered teaching him to ride a bike in a church parking lot, one hand on the seat, promising I would not let go until he was ready. Funny thing about fathers, sometimes we keep holding on to men who already let go of us years ago. I have done everything I can to keep Evan from choosing sides, I said. That is why I stayed quiet. Then keep doing that. The words came too fast, too easy, like he had been waiting for me to be the reasonable one again. I did not yell, but my voice changed. Even I heard it. No. Grant went quiet. I will not lie by silence forever, just because your house runs smoother when I disappear. He sounded exhausted when he answered. I'm not asking you to disappear. Yes, you are. You just found a softer word for it. He did not have an answer. So we ended the call like men in my family often end painful things. Too politely. Too unfinished. Take care, Dad. You too, son. I sat there after the line went dead, listening to nothing. Then my phone buzzed again. Brielle. Not a call, a text. Stop confusing Evan. He is finally accepting that not everyone keeps promises. Don't undo his progress. I read it once, then again. Progress. That was the word that made my hand shake. She had taken my grandson's disappointment and named it healing. She had taken his distance from me and called it growth. That was not protection. That was training. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. There are moments when anger begs to become a message, but a message can be screenshotted, cropped, forwarded, and used as a costume. Brielle was too good at costumes, so I set the phone down, then I went to the hall closet. There was a small basket where I kept mail I had not had the heart to sort. Old flyers, insurance notices, a church bulletin, a seed catalog Ruth would have circled with a red pen if she were still here. Under all of it was a white envelope, returned, my handwriting, Evan's name, the birthday card. Across the front, stamped in dull black ink, were the words, Return to sender, recipient unavailable. I stood in the hallway holding that envelope like it weighed 10 pounds. Recipient unavailable. He had been unavailable because someone had made him that way. I remembered choosing that card. It had a silly cartoon dog wearing a crown because Evan loved bad jokes when he was little. Inside, I had written, Proud of you always, even when you are too old to admit Grandpa is funny. I had put a $25 gift card inside. Nothing grand. Just enough for a milkshake after rehearsal or a used book from Oak Hollow. Brielle had told me he had outgrown cards. No, she had made sure mine never reached him. That was the first time I opened the gray folder with purpose. Not sadness. Purpose. I placed the returned birthday card inside. Then I added Brielle's text. Printed, dated. The Oak Hollow receipt, the laptop payment, the theater camp confirmation, the dental copay record, the PTA post. A note from Lorna Hayes about the donated supplies. Each paper made the story clearer and uglier. I did not feel powerful. I felt ashamed that love had to be organized like evidence. Then I took the little wooden stage hammer from my workbench and set it on top of the folder. Ruth would have understood that. She always believed children deserved the truth, but not as a weapon, as a light. I looked at her photograph near the kitchen doorway. I'm trying, I said. The house did not answer. Of course it did not. But sometimes speaking to the dead is how the living keep from breaking. That evening, Grant sent one more text. Dad, please don't go around Brielle. Let us handle Evan. Let us. As if I had not been family. As if a grandmother's memory, a grandfather's love, and a child's own history could all be locked behind the word us. I did not respond. Instead, I wrote one sentence on the outside of the gray folder. If Evan ever asks, answer with proof, not anger. Because that was the line I promised myself I would not cross. I would not feed my grandson a counter lie. I would not make him hate his mother just to make him love me again. But I would not let Brielle keep manufacturing his disappointment and calling it peace. When I saw my own birthday card returned unopened, I finally understood something ugly. Brielle had not been protecting Evan from disappointment. She had been manufacturing it. That night, I spread everything across my garage workbench. Receipts, printed texts, payment confirmations, a returned birthday card, a PT, a post, theater camp paperwork. Little scraps of proof that should never have had to exist. The garage smelled like sawdust, motor oil, and old paint. It had always been the one place in my life where broken things made sense. A loose hinge needed screws. A cracked board needed glue. A wobbly chair needed patience and the right angle. People were harder. People could break something and call it care. I started with January. Refurbished laptop. Paid by Joshua Baker. I remembered that one clearly. Evan's old laptop had been freezing during online homework, and Grant mentioned it in passing, like a man thinking out loud more than asking for help. I found a refurbished one from a repair shop across town. Nothing fancy. Good battery, clean keyboard. Enough memory for schoolwork and theater videos. A week later, Grant told me, Brielle really stretched to make that happen. I had smiled then. I did not smile now. I wrote, January, laptop support renamed. Then, February, dental copay. Evan had cracked a tooth on a popcorn kernel during movie night. Insurance covered some, not all. Grant was stressed, Brielle was upset, and I called the dental office myself. Mona Greer, the billing clerk, said, Mr. Baker, you don't have to do this. I told her, he's my grandson. That's usually reason enough. 2 days later, Brielle posted online, another surprise expense handled. Moms just figure it out. Moms do. Good ones do. So do grandfathers. I wrote, February, dental help erased. Then March, script binder, stage shoes, Oak Hollow books, and stage supply. Marcy Lane had wrapped the shoes in brown paper, tied the receipt to the bag with blue tape, and said, he's lucky to have a grandpa who pays attention. I had answered, I'm lucky he still lets me. That sentence hurt now, because I did not know then that someone was teaching him not to. I wrote, March, theater supplies renamed. Then April, theater camp deposit, $385. That one had taken planning. I skipped a fishing weekend with an old friend, sold a box of spare tools I had not used in years, took a small repair job at a community theater where the backstage stairs creaked like they were telling ghost stories. I did not mind. Money spent on a child's voice is not a loss. At Oak Hollow, I asked Marcy to print the note on the receipt. For Evan, Grandpa is proud of your voice. I remember standing in the parking lot after she handed it to me, reading that line twice like a fool. Proud, such a simple word. Such a dangerous word when someone else wants a child to believe you do not care. I wrote, April, camp deposit hidden. Then May, set materials, paint, brushes, gaffer tape, screws, scrap wood, corner braces. I had carried them into the school myself. Later, under Kelsey Rowe's PTA comment, Brielle wrote, just doing what moms do. I placed that printed post beside the receipts. The pattern looked quiet on paper. That made it worse. No single item would convince everyone. A laptop here, a copay there, shoes, binder, camp, paint, cards, calls. One by one, they could be explained away. Together, they told the truth. Brielle had not stolen money. She had stolen the name attached to love. I sat down on the old stool near the workbench. The wooden stage hammer was beside my elbow. Evan had drawn a crooked star on it with marker years ago. Ruth told him every real tool needed a signature. He wrote his initials too big and mine too small. I ran my thumb over that faded marker. For a second, I was back in the auditorium with him at 7 years old, watching him pretend to fix a fake wall. "Grandpa, did I do it right?" "You did it safe," I told him. "That matters more." He grinned like I had handed him the moon. I missed that boy so badly my chest hurt. Then I opened the folder again. There was one paper I had not wanted to read too closely. A PTA email. Subject line, Spring Theater Support Summary. Brielle had sent it to a small committee group. Kelsey Rowe had forwarded part of it around later, probably thinking she was helping Brielle look noble. In the middle of the email, Brielle wrote, "I had to cover Evan's theater costs myself after promised family help fell through, but we are making it work." Promised family help fell through. There it was. Not silence, not misunderstanding. Not a mother overwhelmed and accidentally forgetting to mention my name. A sentence. Typed. Sent. Shared. She had told people I promised and failed. I felt something hot move through me then. Not sadness, not confusion. Anger. Real anger. The kind that makes an old man stand up too fast and feel his knees object. I picked up my phone and nearly called Brielle. My thumb hovered over her name. I wanted to ask her how many times a person had to lie before she stopped calling it protection. I wanted to ask if Evan cried when she told him I forgot again. I wanted to ask whether she ever looked at that boy's face and remembered she was hurting him too. But I did not call, because a call would become her evidence. She would say I was attacking her, pressuring her, creating drama, confusing Evan. No. I put the phone down. Then I called Lorna Hayes. She answered after 2 rings. "Mr. Baker?" Her voice had that teacher's alertness, the sound of a woman always prepared for a parent, a broken prop, or a student crying in the hallway. "Lorna," I said, "I need to ask something carefully." "All right. The theater camp deposit. Did the office show who paid it?" A pause. "Yes." "Whose name?" "Yours." I closed my eyes. "Did Evan know?" I assumed Brielle told him. That was the sentence adults say before they realize assuming was the door the lie walked through. Lorna's voice softened. "Mr. Baker, is Evan under the impression she paid it?" "He is under the impression I forgot him." She went quiet. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words nearly undid me, not because she owed them, because someone finally understood the shape of the wound. I asked one more question. "Was a receipt copy placed with the camp paperwork?" "Yes, I believe there was one in the supply envelope. I sent the original home through Brielle, but a copy stayed in the theater folder for records." "Do you know where it is now?" "It should be in the prop room file box, unless someone moved it." The prop room. I looked at the wooden hammer. The whole story had begun in that room, years ago, when Evan first learned that fake doors could still teach real courage. "Thank you, Lorna." "Mr. Baker," she said, "if this comes out, please be careful with Evan." "I know. I mean it. Children can handle truth, but they should not be made to carry adult revenge." "I agree." And I did. That was the line. The only one I still trusted. After we hung up, I added Lorna's confirmation to the folder. Then I wrote a timeline on a yellow legal pad. January, laptop. February, dental copay. March, binder and shoes. April, camp deposit. May, supplies and PTA narrative. Below that, I wrote pattern. Then I crossed it out and wrote something truer. Erasure. I sat with that word for a long time. Erasure sounds clean. It is not. It is dirty work. It takes patience to erase someone from a child's heart. You do it slowly. A missed call here, a hidden card there, a gift renamed, a date changed, a sigh in front of the right people, a sentence like, "Grandpa forgot again," spoken softly enough to sound sad instead of cruel. That was Brielle's genius. She did not look like someone swinging a hammer. She looked like someone cleaning up after damage she had caused herself. I understood then why people believed her. She seemed tired. She seemed protective. She seemed wounded. And maybe some part of her was. Maybe Brielle really did fear losing control of Evan. Maybe she had grown up in a house where adults came and went, and promises broke so often she decided control was safer than trust. Pain can explain why someone reaches for control. It does not excuse them for using a child as the rope. I put the receipts back in order. Then I took the theater camp copy request note from Lorna's email and placed it at the top. For the first time, I had more than pain. I had a map. Not of money, of love. Every place I had tried to reach Evan. Every place Brielle had stepped between us. I did not know yet that Evan would find the receipt before I ever showed him the folder. I did not know he would become the one asking questions no adult could soften. All I knew was this. The lies were no longer floating around loose. They had dates. They had amounts. They had witnesses. And one of them was sitting somewhere in a prop room file box, waiting under stage dust and old scripts. By the time I finished the timeline, I was no longer looking at missed calls, lost cards, or mixed-up dates. I was looking at a map of every place Brielle had erased my name from love. The next afternoon, Lorna Hayes called me about a stuck door. Not a real door, a stage door. One of those painted plywood doors that looks solid from the audience but weighs less than a grocery bag if you lift it right. It was part of Evan's showcase set, and it kept catching on the frame every time one of the kids tried to enter. Lorna said, "I hate to bother you." I told her, "A stuck door is not a bother, it is a personal insult." She laughed softly. I needed that laugh. So I drove to Willow Creek Middle School with my toolbox on the passenger seat and the little wooden stage hammer tucked beside it. I told myself I would fix the door and leave before Evan saw me. That sounds cowardly. Maybe it was, but by then I had learned that my presence could make things harder for him. Brielle had wrapped my name in so many disappointments that even a simple hello from me seemed to put confusion on his face. The auditorium was quiet when I arrived. Quiet, but not empty. A few kids were backstage. Someone was testing lights from the booth. The stage smelled like dust, paint, old curtains, and the faint, sweet smell of cafeteria cookies drifting in from somewhere down the hall. I had always loved that smell. School buildings have their own weather. You learn it after enough years fixing them. The hallway lights buzz. The floors shine in patches. The gym carries echoes like it is saving them for later. And the auditorium always feels like a secret room where shy kids become brave for 2 minutes at a time. I found the stuck door near stage left. It was worse than Lorna said. The hinge was slightly off. The frame had swollen a little. The bottom edge scraped whenever it swung open, making a sound like the set itself was complaining. I knelt with my screwdriver and got to work. That was when I heard Evan's voice. He was behind the flats with another boy, Asher Pike, the tech booth helper. Asher said, "Your grandpa's here." Evan answered, "Yeah, Ms. Hayes probably called him." There was nothing cruel in that. Not yet. Then Asher said, "He fixes a lot of stuff." Evan gave a little laugh, not happy, not kind. "My grandpa only shows up when people are watching." The screwdriver stopped in my hand. I stayed still. So still, my knee started to ache. Asher said, "Are you sure? He fixed half this set." Evan answered, "Mom said he likes looking helpful more than being helpful." There are sentences that do not hit all at once. They walk through you slowly, room by room, turning off lights. That one did. I looked down at the fake door in front of me, a door that had never opened into a real room. Somehow, it felt more honest than the adults in my family. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to tell Evan about the camp deposit, the shoes, the laptop, the birthday card, the nights I sat in my garage sorting proof because his mother had taught him to doubt me. But he was 13 and backstage. and nervous before a show. So I tightened the hinge instead. That was all I trusted myself to do. A moment later, Evan came around the flat and saw me. His face changed. Not much. Enough. "Mr. Baker," he said. "Ms. Hayes said the door is sticking." Mr. Baker. Not Grandpa, not Grandpa Hammer. Mr. Baker. I felt the old wooden hammer in my pocket, like a small bone from a life I used to have. I forced a nod. She was right. Doors got an attitude. He did not smile. I tried again. At least fake doors admit when they're stuck. Nothing. Just that careful look children get when they think an adult might make things awkward. I turned back to the hinge. The scrape eased after a few adjustments. I sanded the bottom edge, checked the swing, and stepped back. The door opened cleanly. Evan tested it once, then again. "It works," he said. "Good." He looked at me like he wanted to ask something but had been trained not to. Then Brielle's voice called from the aisle. "Evan, honey, we need you near costumes." He straightened immediately. Not scared, exactly. Managed. That was the word. My grandson had learned to manage himself around his mother's version of me. Brielle appeared at the edge of the stage with a tote bag over her shoulder and a phone in her hand. She smiled at me, but it did not reach her eyes. "Joshua," she said, "I didn't know you were coming." Lorna called about the door. "So helpful?" The words were polite. The tone was not. Evan looked between us. I hated that. Children should not have to read adult weather before rehearsal. So I closed my toolbox. "Doors fixed. I'll get out of the way." Brielle's smile softened for Evan's benefit. "That's probably best. Big night tomorrow." Big night. For Evan. And all I could think was that I had become something he had to get through before stepping on stage. I walked to the prop room to put away a sanding block Lorna had loaned me. The room was small, crowded, and full of old pretending. Painted suitcases, plastic flowers, a fake telephone, cardboard books, a red cloth draped over a prop box. On the shelf sat the supply envelope from Oak Hollow. I recognized the blue tape on the corner. My chest tightened, but I did not touch it. Not then. Instead, I took the little wooden stage hammer from my pocket. I do not know why. Maybe because hearing Mr. Baker had knocked something loose in me. Maybe because I suddenly felt foolish carrying it around like a grandfather in a story that no one else remembered. I set it on top of the prop box. For a second, I rested my hand over it. The crooked star Evan had drawn years ago was faded now. Still there, barely. Just like me, I whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy." Not to the hammer, to the boy. To the child who had been handed a story full of missing pages. Then I left. In the hallway, Lorna caught up with me. "Joshua," she said quietly. That was the first time she did not call me Mr. Baker. Maybe she knew I needed to be a person right then. "The door's fixed," I said. "I saw." I kept walking. She walked with me. "You all right?" "No. But men my age have said, 'I'm fine,' over smaller graves than this." "I'm fine." She did not believe me. Good teachers rarely do. At the exit, I turned back once. Through the auditorium doors, I could hear kids laughing. Evan's voice was somewhere among them, young and bright and farther away than it should have been. "I might skip tomorrow," I said. Lorna's face changed. "Joshua? I'll send the materials, the shelf idea too. Maybe it's better if I stop making things complicated." She shook her head. "You are not the complication." I smiled a little, a tired smile. "That may be true, but I'm the one he sees that way." She had no answer. Neither did I. I walked to the parking lot carrying my toolbox, feeling older than 63 for the first time in a long while. Halfway to my truck, I realized I had left the wooden hammer in the prop room. I stopped, turned, almost went back. Then I didn't. I told myself it belonged there, with the fake doors, the old scripts, the things children outgrow. That was the lowest I had felt in all of it. Not when Brielle lied. Not when Grant told me to give space. Not when the birthday card came back unopened. It was that moment in the parking lot, deciding that maybe Evan's life would be easier if I became one more prop left behind. I got into my truck and sat there without starting the engine. Inside the school, rehearsal went on. Kids crossed stage marks. Lights changed. Someone laughed too loudly. A fake door opened cleanly because I had fixed it. And my grandson still believed I only showed up when people were watching. I was halfway to the parking lot when Evan opened that prop box, lifted the red cloth, and found the receipt Brielle never meant him to see. Evan found the receipt because he was looking for the wooden hammer. That part still matters to me. He was not snooping. He was not trying to expose anyone. He was 13 years old, nervous before a showcase, looking for a prop tool his grandfather had left behind by accident. Sometimes truth does not arrive because someone planned revenge. Sometimes it waits quietly under a red cloth until the right hands lift it. Lorna told me later what happened. Evan came into the prop room after I left. The stage door was fixed, the kids were resetting for another run, and Asher Pike had reminded him that the old hammer was probably in the prop box. Evan opened it. Plastic flowers, a painted book, a fake telephone, 2 folded scarves, then the wooden hammer, and underneath it, a folded receipt. He almost ignored it. Kids do not usually care about receipts. To them, paper is either homework or trash. But his name was handwritten on the outside. Evan. He opened it. Oak, Hollow Books, and Stage Supply. Youth Theater Camp Deposit, $385. Script Binder, $18.50. Used Stage Shoes, $26. Paid by Joshua Baker. Then the note printed at the bottom. For Evan. Grandpa is proud of your voice. Lorna said he stood there a long time. Too long for a boy just finding a piece of paper. When he came out, his face had changed. Not angry, not yet. More like the floor had shifted, and he was waiting to see if the walls would move too. He walked to Lorna with the receipt in his hand. "Ms. Hayes," he asked, "did Grandpa pay for my camp?" Lorna looked at the receipt. Then she looked at Evan. That was not an easy moment for her. Teachers are not supposed to step into family wounds unless the child is already standing inside one. She chose her words carefully. "Your grandfather helped make sure you had a place there." Evan's hand tightened around the paper. "But Mom said he forgot. She said she had to cover it." Lorna took a breath. "I can't speak for what was said at home, but I know your grandfather cared about you being there." He looked down at his shoes. The same shoes. The ones I bought used because new ones were too expensive, and because Evan's feet kept growing like he had a private deal with time. "Did he buy these too?" Lorna's eyes softened. "I believe those came from Oak Hollow." Evan whispered. "Mom said she found them." "She may have picked them up," Lorna said gently, "but that receipt has your grandfather's name on it." That was how truth entered the room, not as an accusation, as a mismatch. Children notice mismatches. A bedtime story changes. A date does not line up. A gift has the wrong name attached. A grown-up looks away too fast. Evan folded the receipt once, then unfolded it again. "Did he know about my audition?" Lorna went very still. That question had been waiting in him longer than the receipt. "Yes," she said. His eyes lifted. "He did?" He stood in the back by the exit. Evan stared at her. "But Mom said he didn't come." "He came," Lorna said quietly. "He told me he didn't want to make you nervous. He said some kids do better when love stays in the back row." That one broke him a little. Lorna said he sat down on the edge of a prop crate and stared at the floor. Not crying yet, trying not to. 13-year-old boys can be very brave about the wrong things. They can hold pain like it is a test. Then he said, "Why would she say that?" Lorna did not answer too quickly. Good woman, good teacher. Finally she said, That is a question your mother needs to answer." But Evan was not finished. He asked if he could call Oak Hollow. Lorna hesitated. Then she said she would call with him present, on speaker, so nothing felt secret. Marcy Lane answered from the store. "Oak Hollow Books and Stage Supply." Lorna introduced herself and explained there was a student asking about an old receipt. Marcy remembered immediately. "Oh, for the theater camp? Joshua Baker." "Yes, sweet man. Paid in cash and asked me 3 times if the note would print clearly." Evan leaned closer. "What note?" Marcy's voice softened when she realized he was listening. "The one that said your grandpa was proud of your voice, honey." Evan closed his eyes. "Lorna told me that part later, and I had to sit down." Marcy continued, "He stood right at my counter and said, 'Please don't let him think I missed this.' I thought that was a beautiful thing." Evan did not speak. Marcy added, "He counted the bills carefully. I remember because he joked that stage dreams were getting expensive." That sounded like me. A bad joke wrapped around a feeling too tender to show plainly. After the call, Evan asked to see the prop room file box. Lorna did not hand him everything. She was careful. But she let him look at the theater camp folder because his name was on it. There was the copy of the camp confirmation. There was the payment record. There was my name again. Joshua Baker. Paid. Confirmed. Received. 3 words that told a cleaner story than every soft lie Brielle had handed him. Then Asher came in looking for a headset battery and saw Evan sitting with the folder open. "What happened?" Asher asked. Evan said, "I think my mom lied." Lorna stepped in. "Evan, slow down." But once a child has seen one corner of the truth, slowing down does not put the wall back up. Evan went to his backpack. In the side pocket, under a crumpled rehearsal schedule, he found an old envelope. I did not know about that one. A card. Opening night. I had given it to Brielle weeks earlier after she told me Evan was too stressed for visitors. She said she would put it with his things when the timing was better. The envelope had never been opened. Evan stared at his own name written in my handwriting. He opened it carefully. Inside, I had written, "For opening night. Even if I'm in the back row, I'm always there." He read that card twice. Then he folded it and put it behind the receipt. That was when his hurt became something else. Not hatred. Not yet. Questions. A whole row of them, standing up inside him. He asked Lorna if he could call his dad. Grant answered. Lorna stood nearby because she knew this was bigger than a child's private panic now. Evan did not ease into it. "Dad, did Grandpa pay for my theater camp?" Grant went quiet. Evan waited. "Dad?" Grant said. "I think he helped some." "How much is some?" Another silence. Then Grant said, "Evan, where is your mom?" That was the wrong answer. Children hear avoidance better than adults think. Evan looked at the receipt. "Did Grandpa forget my birthday card?" Grant's voice changed. "What card?" "The one in my backpack. It was never opened." Lorna said Grant sounded like a man finally realizing the leak was not in the ceiling anymore. It was in the foundation. "Evan," Grant said, "we'll talk at home." "No," Evan said. One word. Small. Firm. That was the first time my grandson chose not to let the story be moved away from him. "I want to know before the showcase." Grant did not answer. Evan hung up. Lorna did not scold him. She only sat beside him and said, "You do not have to solve this tonight." Evan looked at the receipt. "I'm not solving it," he said. "I'm just finding out if Grandpa is who she said he was." That sentence has stayed with me, because children should not have to investigate love. They should not have to cross-check affection against receipts, teachers, store owners, and unopened cards. But that is what Brielle's lies had done. They had turned my grandson into a detective inside his own family. By the time Evan folded the receipt and slipped it into his pocket, he no longer had one question for his mother. He had a whole stack of them. The showcase began at 7. I almost did not go. That is the truth. I sat in my truck outside Willow Creek Middle School with both hands on the steering wheel, watching families walk through the front doors carrying flowers, phone cameras, and the kind of small excitement school events still know how to create. I had no flowers. I had no card. The card I wrote had already spent weeks unopened in a backpack. All I had was the ache of knowing my grandson might look past me again, like I was just another man who came to fix something and leave. Then I heard Ruth's voice in my memory. Not loud. Ruth never needed loud. She used to say, "Show up clean, Joshua, even if people dirty the story." So I went in. I sat near the back row, close to the exit. Same place I had stood for Evan's audition. Old habit. Old heartbreak. The auditorium was full. Parents whispered. Younger siblings kicked seatbacks. Someone's baby fussed, then settled. On stage, the fixed door stood straight under the lights, opening and closing like it had never given anyone trouble. That made me smile a little. Some repairs are kinder than people. Brielle stood near the PTA table by the aisle, wearing a soft blue blouse and that careful, tired smile. Kelsey Rowe was beside her, arranging donation envelopes and praising her loud enough for nearby parents to hear. "Brielle kept this whole theater program afloat," Kelsey said. "I swear, some mothers carry everything." Brielle lowered her eyes. A beautiful little performance. She did not deny it. She never denied praise that belonged partly to someone else. Grant stood near the side wall, arms crossed, looking like a man who wanted the night to pass without anything cracking. But the crack had already opened. He just did not know where. Then the lights dimmed. Evan stepped on stage in the second scene. I forgot to breathe. He was nervous at first. I could see it in his hands. They twitched near his costume pockets like he was trying to hold himself together from the inside. Then he spoke his first line, clear, soft at first, then stronger. His voice filled the auditorium the way Ruth always believed a child's voice could, if someone gave it room. I felt my throat tighten. Beside me, an older woman dabbed at her eyes during a scene that was not even sad. I understood her completely. Sometimes you do not cry because of the play. You cry because a child has become brave in front of you. When the scene ended, the applause was warm and honest. Evan looked toward the audience. For 1 second, his eyes found the back row. Found me. He did not smile, but he did not look away. That was the first mercy of the night. After the showcase, Principal Wanda Price stepped onto the stage with a microphone. She thanked the students, the teachers, the volunteers, and the PTA. Then she invited Brielle up to say a few words about fundraising. I saw Lorna Hayes stiffen near the curtain. I saw Grant look down. I saw Evan standing by the wing with one hand in his pocket. Brielle walked up smiling. "Thank you all so much," she said. "Theater only happens when parents keep showing up. Sometimes that means late nights, extra costs, and doing what has to be done when others cannot." Others. There it was again. Not a name, a shadow, a carefully shaped absence. Kelsey began clapping first. A few parents joined. Then Evan stepped forward. Not dramatically, not like a child in a movie, just a boy who had reached the end of being confused. "Mom?" Brielle turned, smile still in place. "Yes, honey?" His voice trembled, but it held. "Why did you tell me Grandpa forgot my camp?" The room changed. You could feel it. A school auditorium can hold 1,000 little noises, but when a child asks the wrong true question, silence arrives fast. Brielle's smile froze. "Evan, not now." He pulled the folded receipt from his pocket. "Then why does this say Grandpa paid for it?" Nobody moved. Even Kelsey's mouth opened and closed once, like a stage fish with no line. Brielle came down from the stage edge quickly. "Honey, give me that." Evan stepped back. Not far, just enough. That step broke my heart. A child should not have to step away from his mother to hold on to the truth. Lorna moved closer. calm but firm. "Evan, it's all right." He looked at her, then at me, then back at Brielle. "You said he forgot." Brielle's face flushed. "I was trying to protect you from being disappointed." Evan lifted the receipt higher. He wrote he was proud of my voice. That sentence hit the room harder than any accusation could have, because it was not loud. It was not cruel. It was a child discovering love had been intercepted. Brielle whispered, "You don't understand." Then Lorna stepped in. She did not attack. She did not shame. She did what good teachers do when a child is standing too close to adult damage. She made the room safer. "Joshua Baker helped with theater camp support," Lorna said. "He also repaired set pieces, donated materials, and assisted this program several times this spring." A murmur moved through the parents. Kelsey stared at the donation table. Then Marcy Lane stood near the middle row. "I printed that receipt," she said. "At Oak Hollow, Mr. Baker asked me to add the note." Brielle turned toward her. "Marcy." Marcy shook her head. "No, I remember it clearly." Grant finally walked forward. His face was pale. "Brielle," he said quietly, "we need to stop this." Not enough. Late. But it was the first honest thing he had said in front of everyone. Brielle looked at him like he had betrayed her. Maybe in her mind, he had. That is the danger when someone builds a whole life around controlling the story. Eventually, truth sounds like betrayal. Principal Wanda Price stepped down from the stage. Her voice was professional, but not unkind. "We are not going to turn this into a public argument in front of students," she said. "But from this point forward, all theater donations, camp support, and student supply contributions will be documented through the school office. Sources will be recorded accurately." That mattered, more than people in that room realized, because it meant Brielle could no longer turn support into silence. She could not rename gifts without a record. She could not stand at a PTA table and build herself out of somebody else's hidden kindness. Evan turned toward me. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to carry a wooden hammer and ask if fake walls needed real screws. His eyes were wet. "Grandpa," he said. One word, not Mr. Baker. "Grandpa." I stood up slowly. I wanted to go to him. Every part of me wanted to cross that aisle and gather him up the way I did when he was small. But he was 13 and hurting. So I did not rush him. I only said, "I'm here." His face twisted. "You were at my audition?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at Brielle, then back at him. "Because I thought staying quiet was protecting you." He looked down at the receipt. "It didn't." No, it had not. That was the truth I had to carry too. Brielle began to cry then. Real tears, I think. But real tears do not erase real harm. She reached for Evan. He did not move into her arms. He did not run from her either. That was the bittersweet part. He still loved his mother. Of course he did. Children do not stop loving a parent just because the truth hurts. They simply learn fear can live beside love. Brielle whispered, "Evan, I was scared." He asked, "Of Grandpa?" She shook her head, crying harder. "Of losing you." That quieted the room in a different way. Not forgiveness. Understanding is not forgiveness. But it is sometimes the first honest doorway. I stepped forward then, only a few feet. Evan deserved the truth before any of us deserved to look good. No one argued. Not Brielle, not Grant, not Kelsey, not even me. Because I knew I was included in that sentence too. My silence had not created Brielle's lies, but it had given them space to breathe. Wanda gently asked everyone to give the family privacy. Lorna guided the students toward the lobby. Marcy touched my shoulder as she passed and said nothing, which was somehow kinder than words. Brielle stood near the stage with the receipt still in Evan's hand. Her whole plan had not exploded with shouting. It had folded inward under the weight of one small paper. That night, Brielle did not lose her son. But she lost the one thing her whole plan depended on, the right to be the only voice telling him who loved him. A few months passed before Evan and I felt normal in the same room again. Not perfect. Normal. There is a difference. Perfect is what people pretend after a family breaks something and nobody wants to talk about the crack. Normal is quieter. It is two people sitting at a workbench, sanding the same piece of wood, not rushing the conversation just because silence feels uncomfortable. After the showcase, Principal Wanda Price kept her word. Every theater donation went through the school office. Camp payments were documented. Supply gifts were logged. If a parent, grandparent, neighbor, or stranger helped a child, the record said so plainly. It sounded small. It was not. A lie can live for years in places where nobody writes anything down. Grant changed, too. Slowly. He set up a shared school calendar for Evan's events. I was copied on theater emails. If I sent a card, it went directly to Evan or through the school office. If I bought supplies, Lorna Hayes logged them. If Brielle had concerns, they had to be spoken in front of Grant, not whispered into Evan's ear alone. That was the line I drew. Brielle could still be Evan's mother. She could still love him. She could still apologize, grow, and do better. But she would never again be the only voice telling him who I was. That right was gone. Not temporarily, permanently. We went to family mediation twice. Brielle cried both times. Some of it was guilt. Some of it was fear. Some of it was embarrassment. I did not try to sort which was which. People are rarely one thing. She finally said, "I thought if Evan loved you too much, I would lose him." I answered, "Love is not something you control by starving a child of the truth." She looked down at her hands. For once, she had no polished sentence ready. Evan sat beside Grant, holding the folded receipt in his script binder. He did not wave it around like a weapon. He only kept it there. Later, he told me why. It reminds me to ask when something doesn't make sense. That hurt. But it also made me proud. No child should need proof that he is loved. But if the world forces him to ask questions, then may he at least learn to ask them bravely. The Baker Youth stage shelf opened that fall in a corner of the Willow Creek Auditorium. Nothing fancy. Used stage shoes, old scripts, tape, brushes, costume pieces, prop tools, a small jar for camp scholarships. Lorna placed Ruth's picture on the top shelf, right beside the wooden stage hammer Evan had found in the prop box. Under it, Wanda added a small sign, "For every child whose voice deserves a stage." The first afternoon we stocked it, Evan stood beside me and sorted script binders by size. He picked up the wooden hammer and turned it in his hand. "Can I still use this?" I smiled. "Only on stage. If you use it on real furniture, your grandmother will haunt both of us." He laughed, a real laugh, not full yet, but real. Then he said, quieter, "Grandpa?" I looked at him. "Yes, buddy?" "I'm sorry I believed her." I set down the box of brushes. "You were a child," I said. "Children should not have to investigate adults." He nodded, but I could see the guilt still sitting there. So I added, "And I'm sorry I stayed quiet too long." That surprised him. Maybe adults do not say that enough. Silence did not create Brielle's lies, but silence gave them room. I had thought I was protecting Evan from conflict. In truth, I had left him alone with a story I knew was wrong. That is the lesson I carry now. Silence protects children only when the adults around them are honest. Around liars, silence becomes a hiding place. Brielle and I are civil now. Not close. Maybe we never will be. She still comes to Evan's shows. She still stands near the PTA table. But now, when people ask who donated something, she says the name. Every time. That is not redemption. Not yet. But it is a beginning. And sometimes a beginning is all a family gets after trust has been handled badly. My daughter-in-law fed my grandson lies about me. But in the end, the truth did not come shouting through a courtroom or a family fight. It came folded inside a prop box, waiting for a child brave enough to read it. Thank you for watching and sharing this time with me today. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. If this story moved you even a little, please consider subscribing to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube believes you may enjoy it, so take care of yourself, drink some water if it is late, and enjoy the next one.